Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We're here for a special edition of our Instagram Live. We have a really interesting, exciting guest named Rita Kakati-Shah, who started a company called Uma, who's going to join us today to talk about her company and her sort of voyage as a mother and founding a company that focuses on women in the workforce and how to keep women in the workforce. So I'm going to have her join us now. Here we go. Okay.
Hi,
Hello. I
how
always
are you today?
where I'm like positioned too low somehow. Let me see if I can figure this. Okay. All right, that's better. Anyway, welcome, Rita. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good to see
I,
you.
I just introduced you, but I'll say it again. Rita is the founder and CEO of UMA, which is a company that focuses on bringing women and keeping women in the workforce, which is especially challenging right now in the middle of a pandemic. Because I think the stats are showing that women are dropping out of the workforce at a higher rate than men. So this is an especially important topic right now. So I'm going to let Rita take it. I guess we'll start with sort of your story, how you ended up where you are right
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying hi. I can see some like familiar face,
now.
familiar names on there. So hi everyone. Yeah, so I started my journey. I'm from a finance background, from the London, born and bred in the UK. Started my career in finance. I was in investment banking for about 10 years. And then I transitioned into the healthcare industry where I was in business development, which means I got to travel here, there, and everywhere. And then I relocated to New York, which is where I now live. Um, and after I got married and I settled here, and then I have two small children who are patients of Manhattan Valley Pediatrics, and they're 5 and 7 now, actually. And when they were really young, I took around, I think, 3.5, 4 years off to raise them. And I've got to tell you, Judith, that out of all of the jobs I've done, I thought finance, working 24/7 sometimes in investment banking, was tough. I thought crossing multiple time zones in the business development role was tough. That was nothing compared to being a full-time mom. Like, oh my goodness, you're not just working 24/7, you're constantly sleep deprived. Have to be always with it. You can't ever take a sick day. And it's just nonstop. And that was something that even I took for granted when I wasn't a mother. Um, so that was really kind of, I guess, what planted the seed with in terms of like, wow, I'm actually picking up so many skills from the journey of motherhood than I actually did when I was in a professional career before. Things like I thought I was patient until I became a mother. That taught me what real patience actually was. And then just being able to negotiate. I tell people all the time that if you can negotiate with a toddler or an adolescent, there is nobody on this planet you can't take on. So it was little things like that that I picked up, just being able to communicate with these little beings that initially in the younger years can't speak back. So you learn different things about communication. It's just not verbal. It's just, it can be just through motions, through kind of like just writing and drawing. There's so many different ways of doing that you learn as a full-time parent. So that's really what planted the seeds for starting UMA, which is really, I call it an empowerment platform, a journey for women and minorities to really gain that confidence and that really kind of relive that inner voice that we already have inside of us, to kind of, whether it's just get back to the professional workforce, whether it's you're already in the workforce and you want to get to that next step, or whether you're in a senior leadership position and you want to get through that glass ceiling. So that's sort of in a nutshell what UMA does. And yeah, it's been fantastic, a fantastic 4 years in the journey.
That's amazing. Yeah, I tell people all the time when I had my daughter, I only took like 7 or 8 weeks off of work for a variety of reasons. It probably wasn't my best decision, but I felt so incompetent at home with this crying newborn that I was very anxious to get back to work to do something that I felt like I knew what I was doing. And it's ironic that my whole job is working with parents and helping them figure out best way to manage their babies, whether it be feeding or sleeping or behavior or nutrition. There's so many different things, but for whatever reason, myself,
Yeah.
the parent, it was so challenging, and I, really appreciate it until you have your own. Um, so yeah, I mean, maybe talk a little bit about how you've kind of maintain your business while during the pandemic, and what are you doing at home with kids?
Yeah, you know what? I've got to say, so one of the reasons I even started Uma in the first place was because of the fact that I call it like an identity crisis at times. Because when you are a full-time parent, and I was exclusively just fully on motherhood mode for almost 4 years, and I lost my confidence, Judith. Simply put, I remember my husband, who happens to be in finance, used to kind of say, let's get the date night babysitter out and just go out for dinner or something. By that stage, my kids were now sleeping through the night, and I would think of any excuse not to go out. I would be like, oh, well, Bahi might wake up in 11 hours, or Rhea might just need another diaper change, or whatever. It was the most bogus excuses I would think of not to go out. And really, that was because I just didn't feel good about myself. I was like, what if somebody were to ask me a question about what I do or what I'm doing other than that? Because I always felt when I went out, people would ask me questions, Judith, about like, oh, okay, it would feel like they were just until you're just a mother. Okay, and what else do you do? And I'm like, what do you mean, what else do I do? This is like, it's beyond anything. So it's little things like that. You're put into this box. You feel like this stigma that exists where you kind of go into this little bit of a hole. And that for me was like incredible. Like it just really, really gets you down. And then one day I had to go to India all of a sudden. Because a cousin of mine, it was a tragic accident. I had to suddenly fly back to India. And this was the first time that I actually left my kids alone. In hindsight, I could have taken them with me because, family, there was so much help over there. But, I was worried about like malaria or like dengue fever, so just random stuff. So I didn't take them. And this was the first time I actually went myself. And, other than the first few days where I was constantly looking around, like, at the plug points, electrical sockets, because I'm so used to the kids always being around. So when I realized that, wow, I was meeting kind of my family, old friends that I'd worked with, and just having a laugh, but not just laughing for myself, and that sort of was me sort of realizing that, oh my gosh, I'd almost forgotten who I was. When you become a parent, when you become a full-time, particularly mother, and that is your caregiving role to look after your children, quite often that is your life. Any conversation you'd have is about, oh, what did you watch on TV, Rita? But like, oh, we watched Thomas or, Ninja Turtle, whatever it was. Or did you read any interesting books today or anything in the news? Yes, we read Goodnight Galaxy or Little Blue Truck Rides Away, whatever it was. So everything is about the kids. I had nothing that I was doing for myself. So this taught me that, wow, I've almost lost my identity. So I think for me, the first thing was that realizing that. So then when I got back, and that's really what I thought, okay, I need to do something about this. I recognized that was an issue, and this is how I need to get something and do something about this. So that's really kind of why I thought, okay, and I didn't know what shape that would take initially. So that's why I thought, okay, let me go and start Uma because of that. And then to go to your question, Judith, about, COVID now, it's, wow, fast forward from that journey 4 years ago, coming on to like, COVID and balancing, it's, anyone who's doing this, it's absolutely nuts because, homeschooling in itself, I'm not a teacher, but, just trying to maintain working your sanity, but at the same time, these two little people are still at that age where they're dependent on an adult sort of pressing buttons for them on their iPads, or now my kids do have their own devices from their schools, but this didn't happen back in early March. Back in early March, when overnight they were both put on homeschool, we were sharing devices. I had a work iPad, but it was on my account, and I would be on a call or on a Zoom, and my daughter would pop in to the Zoom meeting. And that's why I realized that, oh, maybe I should have logged out and gone in through a different browser or something. So things like that were happening. Or I'd have meetings on my calendar that would just disappear because my son would be like, oh, yeah, I just hit the red cross because it came up. Things like that. So homeschooling itself, it's very tough for everyone. But I think the way I've managed to maintain it is just by having structure, Judith, structure the day. And I know it's the same with you as well, just having structure and maintaining a calendar. I live on my calendar, and that's something that I just have. I need to do that, to be able to maintain it.
Are you the primary caregiver for your children? Do you have help? How involved is your partner?
Yeah, so pre-quarantine, we had a caregiver. And she has kids of her own, so we've had nobody since March at all. So it's really my husband and I. We're both working from home. We have a New York City apartment, so no big house, no kind of like different levels of floors. We only have limited space. Both of us are working from home. My daughter, she's been in person some of the day, but it's relatively a short period of time. There's no after school, there's no early drop off anymore. So we're trying to manage everything. Now, my husband works in finance in the market. So he has been trying to do things when I've got meetings, but it's mostly me that does it. It always, tends to just fall on me. And just little things like, doing tasks or reminding them to just get their homework done or just having a piece of fruit in the afternoon. It wouldn't necessarily get done unless I kind of think, oh, guys, have you had something that isn't sort of just, unhealthy to eat or something. So there's a lot. And, there's research actually that McKinsey put out about a month ago now that 25% of particularly women have left the workforce during quarantine because of the added responsibilities, just from working and balancing home life and work at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think these numbers are remarkable. So it's sort of similar to like when you take some time off after you have a baby, in terms of, a lot of women are taking time off right now because of COVID and all the demands that you've mentioned. What would you sort of recommend in terms of people marketing themselves or when they're ready to get back into the workforce? What tips do you have for kind of how to phrase what you've been doing? I mean, it's not like we're sitting at home doing nothing, obviously. We've become like managers and CEOs of our families and our kids, which, as you kind of on before, was a 24-hour job ability and sometimes more challenging and than any other type of job that any of us have had before. So is there anything you like, how would you pose that? Like, let's say I've taken 3 months off of work, which I haven't, but let's say I had, and I'm, looking to get back into the workforce. How do you explain that to potential employers?
Yeah, I mean, so you're totally right. I mean, so I would say, Judith, the first thing is, at least in your own head, don't phrase it like you've taken time off, because quite often employers see it that way. So if
Okay.
you in your own head, you think, okay, I've taken time off, you're on the defensive, trying to justify how you're now picking up actually skill sets that are relevant back to the workplace. What you've done is you've transitioned careers into something that is perhaps more of a caregiving role, but you're still working. It might not necessarily be in the paid professional workforce, but it's still work, and you're still picking up professional workplace skills that are completely transferable if should you decide to return at some point in the future. So I think that's the first thing, because if you know that and hold on to anything that you've done, whether it's something you've done on a 3 months, you probably wouldn't have done this, but anyone who's taken a longer period of time may have volunteered at the school's PTA, for example. But however long the time is, think about what are the skills you've gained in this career transition of yours, whether it's problem solving, whether it's negotiating, whether it's just being able to just communicate anything beyond belief. These are skills that are 100% yours. You own that. Think of personal examples of how you've communicated, of how you've negotiated, of how you've structured multiple different things in a day, of how you've averted crises of things that are going on, because these are things that at some point you're going to have to kind of navigate back in the workforce. And in my opinion, nobody better than a mother to do this. And actually research shows that, St. Louis Federal Bank, quite a few years ago, did actually research on this and actually showed that mothers actually of two children came up with having been a lot more efficient than women or anyone who didn't have any kids at all when they go back to work, just because of their ability to just be more organized, get things done. They don't procrastinate. They don't take that 1 hour break at 4 p.m. to check their social media. They do these things later on. And these are things that they avoid doing. So these are the kind of things that you've got to, when you're thinking of going back, think about that branding, think of that conviction, because if you're confident in the skills that you have gained rather than what you think you might have lost, that will come across to any employer. And it's the confidence that's ultimately going to sell you for your next job.
I 100% agree. I can't be too concrete about it. Listen to you talk about it. My question would be if I was in that position. So what do I put on my resume or my CV? Like what do I put? Do I say, you know, 1 year time parent, or what would you do with that?
Yeah, so I think again it's the same thing. It depends on how you present yourself. At the end of the day, employers, and here's the unfortunate truth out there. So Harvard Business Review did a study that if you have a career break on your resume, and that reason for that career gap was due to parenthood, motherhood, you are 50% less likely to be even called for an interview than if you had been fired and that was the reason for your gap. And unfortunately, that is the truth that is out there. We can't, you can't deny the research out there. So what I tell people is that rather than hide from that, so quite often a lot of clients, they just have a gap and then they do a big jump to something they did. And naturally, if people see just a gap in your resume, you see people ask about it. And when people ask and if there's nothing on there, our natural reaction is to be on the defensive. We think, oh, I did that, but, or because you're trying to justify what you did rather than own it and speak amazingly about all of the experiences. So I tell people, don't have a gap, fill it up, and then phrase it to something that best sells what you did. Think about when you apply for a job, don't just have one version of a resume, have different versions according to the job description that you're going for. If it's something that really needs, I don't know, problem solving skills, for example, or great negotiation skills, or you're going into a project manager type of role, phrase it that way. Project management of in my case, the Kakati-Shah household, or CEO of parenting, whatever it is, it's something that you want to own that title because it's yours. Nobody ever asks, is it a paid or unpaid job that you put on your resume? That can come later on when they're doing the background checks. This is something that is absolutely a job because you're doing it. These are skills that you're picking up, and you can bullet point skills you did under that. You can run your household finances. You can look after the interior decorating, renovation project, whatever it is. There are different ways of phrasing experiences that is very organized, works in problem solving. That is something that you can translate directly to going back in the workforces. So if you're thinking of going into a finance role, for example, and you happen to budget your household finances, that is 100% relatable. So on your bullets there, you'd pick something that is directly related to what you're going to be applying to, and there are different courses out there as well that people can be signing up for. I would say this is a time to look at things of what's out there. There are so many kind of, low cost, free resources out there, whether it's doing your LinkedIn courses out there, sign up. People like to see, they don't always see that what you've done, what is your future? There's another example where people give promotions based upon what your future projection is. And actually men have been shown to be doing this better than women. So for example, if you were to ask a man in their year-end review, they'll talk about the future. Well, this is the potential. If I get in that position, I could build up the revenue of the company, I don't know, 300%, whatever it is. A woman would spend time, research is showing, actually talk about what she's accomplished in the last year, rather than what she could be doing in the future. So it's the same kind of thing. Your resume is showing your future potential. You might have not been doing something in the area you want to do now, but later on, if you want to go into the healthcare industry after some gap and you think, God, I'm a little bit rusty. What have you done to unrust yourself? I've signed up for this course. I'm reading some magazines. I'm contributing to these articles. Here are a couple of LinkedIn pieces I've written on so-and-so topic. So basically, what is it showing? that you're still passionate, you're interested, and you're still relevant, and you're out there and you're a go-getter.
Okay. In terms of UMA, work with individuals or is it mostly companies?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's pivoted as well since quarantine. So since quarantine's happened, and this is where we are now, work a lot with individuals. So anybody who maybe is, thinking about their next career move at the moment, or not sure what they want to do, but they just sort of want to build up a bit of confidence or sort of that inner voice. So it's a lot of coaching and mentoring that we're doing right now with individuals. From a company perspective, it's a lot of corporate training. Could be one-on-one coaching with managers, senior leadership. A lot of work on diversity and inclusion right now, and workplace culture as well. So
very, very important stuff. Okay, well, let's see if anybody has any questions who's watching. Questions out there. Let me see if anyone's written. Sorry, I'm like holding the phone in this awkward way. Okay, I don't see any questions yet, but opening it up for questions. I'm going to keep chatting with Rita until some. I had a question on the top. Oh, in terms of gaining your confidence back, or even gaining confidence. So, I'm sure you know a little bit about it, but Manhattan Valley Pediatrics was started by myself and three other women. And, I think for a long time, deep inside, I knew I wanted to start a business. I had sort of an entrepreneurial kind of like passion and figure out where to. And I used to always say, in terms of what I wanted for my career, I would say, no, I don't know, I'm not, that ambitious. Like, I don't need to be the head or anything. And I think that was my talking myself down. So I didn't do scary. And, I ended up working with a career coach at the time and really getting part of what I wanted, but it took a really long time. And I was telling myself like the wrong story, not that this has to be a therapy session. I was telling myself sort of the wrong, like a fake for a long time because I was too scared to really wanted to do, which I think a lot of women do train to kind of think like we should be focused on our part, taking care of everybody else. Do you have any good tips for helping women kind of get to the bottom of what they really want out of life, and how to sort of build the confidence to take those first steps getting there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think for starters, congratulations on doing this. I mean, it takes a lot of courage. So this is like an amazing thing. I would say the first thing is just really to acknowledge why does that happen. So we as women, 70% of people happen to be, 70% of women, of which 40% happen to be women of color, suffer from imposter syndrome. So that is something, it's where, exactly as you described, Judith, where somebody comes in, they see an opportunity, they know they can do the opportunity, but when it comes to like, oh, and then you start doubting yourself and think, oh, I didn't kind of know if that's really meant for me, or, you know what, maybe I should be doing something else. We also suffer a lot from guilt, and we're also perfectionists by nature. Perfectionists meaning that unless we know we can check 100% of boxes, we don't always go for a task. Men, on the other hand, and this is again as another study by Harvard Business Review that showed that by just checking 60%, two-thirds of boxes, they will just happily go out and do something. What that is, it's a confidence thing, it's risk taking, it's something that naturally we were born with, and then around between the age of 9 and 13, it sort of crumbles down in women, and it kind of coincides with adolescence, puberty, and something happens there. And then it's super, super, super then important to think, okay, then at that age, how do we nurture that inner goddess of go-getting, as I call it, inside of us to get that confidence back out again? So I say that you have that inside of you. We're all born with that sort of that burning desire to do something, to be that somebody or something that we once had that story and that dream inside of us. That is still there. So when life goes on, I think, there are different junctures in our lives, Judith. And in this day and age, there is no such thing as just one career. Back in my parents' age, in my kind of grandparents' age, you literally studied one thing and you became that one thing, and that was it forever. You retired doing that one thing, whatever it was. Now it's like people jump and change all the time. And I think that's the beauty of it. You don't need to know with certainty what you need to do. So don't let that fear of uncertainty keep you back. Let that come across as being a blessing, where I think, look at it as like, wow, now I have options, I have choices. What do I want to do? What makes me happy? What is my wish list of if I could? And just make a note of these things. And then think of barriers. Think of what might be stopping you. What would you need? What are your resources? Is it childcare you need? Is it kind of help? Is it support? What is it that you need that might help you get to the next level? And that's a good starting point to live this dream.
Amazing. So we have a question. Would you address the mindset that you may have to transition into a different industry and different type of role versus what you have done before?
Yes, and that's what I did actually. So I transitioned a few times actually. I transitioned from finance into healthcare. No similarity whatever. I wasn't covering healthcare in the finance industry. Then I transitioned into caregiving. I'm very cognizant of saying that. And now I'm an entrepreneur. So 4 completely different things that I've done. And my mindset has always been the hardest, the toughest was actually my first one when I transitioned from a full-on salaried career in finance to healthcare, because that for me was out of my comfort zone. So I think when you first get out of that comfort zone, for me it was like, what else do I need to do? What are the boxes I want to check off? What I want to do? And for me, what I worked in a big, structured, multinational company where all of your documents, you know, your I's are always dotted, your T's are always crossed. That was not the case in the healthcare industry for this clinical trials drug development company that I helped build in Delaware. So for me, that was my next challenge. It was so uncertain in so many different levels. I did not come from a healthcare background, but I knew business and I knew how to talk to people and I could deal and I could negotiate. So those were things I thought, okay, where could I really add value with what I have? And that took the plunge, changing country, just doing something completely different. So that was my mindset first, just sort of trying to attack that inner, I guess, comfort zone issue. And then, you know, relocating was my second thing. Okay, leaving my home, the UK. I mean, I'd always traveled around the world, but when I actually lived here and I moved here, it was very different. And I actually became homesick. And that was one of the hardest things to overcome initially, because I didn't realize that. But it's because, again, it strips you of your identity. You know, I didn't realize that when I moved to the US, that I had to build up my credit history from start. You know, independent woman, had an American Express in the UK. I wanted to get an American Express here. It was declined because I had no credit history. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that. So it's like my years of being a strong, independent woman just almost disappeared the minute I stepped over here. So then I was my husband's plus one, very supportive, very that, but it was different. You know, I wanted to build up my own identity on my own terms. So that was the other thing. You know, you just have to kind of feel like you're kind of getting over that barrier as well. And I think just going into the entrepreneurship role, that for me was, you know, you are your own boss. But with that, it's such a beautiful feeling. But at the same time, comes so many different challenges as well. That, you know, when I was in a multinational, we had different departments that did everything. You know, when I was an entrepreneur, I'd buy myself a laptop from Best Buy, switch it on. I'm like, oh, okay, where's my email? Oh yeah, I have to get a domain name, do I? Oh, okay, what's that? You know, so things like that, you have to work it out as you go along. So I think the mindset is just, you know, being willing to just take that risk, thinking, what is it you want to do? For me, it was wanting to change something. I was unhappy about the way that something was done, the way that women were perceived in the workforce. That to me was unjust, and I wanted to fix it. So for me, that was my driving factor. No matter how many no's I got, in my head, I knew I wanted to do something and make something happen and help people. So that sort of drove me forward. So I hope that answers your question.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think we sort of talked about this a little bit before, where it's all about options. Every challenge, there are so many different spots in the road where you could just give up, where I probably would have given up 5 years ago, but I had reached, you know, you sort of, who knows why, but you reach a point where like, I'm just ready for this and nothing's going to stop me. And as many times as I've said that about other things, I meant it this time. And I was, you know, finding just the space to have our practice was the biggest challenge. And out, and there were so many points where I feel like 5 years ago, probably would have been like, forget it, this is too complicated. But you just keep pushing, and then you get there. Um, let's see if there's any other questions.
But I think absolutely, you know, as you said, it's just that pushing. And, you know, sometimes the time isn't right. You know, the fact that you might be thinking of something, but the time isn't right for whatever reason. But don't, you know, don't knock yourself back or don't feel bad about that. I think always sort of pat yourself on the back for the small achievements, you know, and think about, okay, when might the time be right? What are the circumstances? What do you need to get in line before you start something? And quite often it might not be the right thing to do as well. So, you know, it's, I think it's a matter of just really, really preparing in yourself and really having that conviction as well.
Okay. All right. I don't think we have any other questions. Is there anything else you wanted to add to our conversation that I didn't touch on?
No, I think this, you know, it's been a great chatting on this topic. It's something I'm so passionate about. But I think if I could leave, you know, a leaving message, I think, you know, it is the confidence piece, really. It is something that we all have inside us, but quite often it's easy to forget, you know. And it's totally fine if you have, you know, Monday morning blues one day, or you just don't feel like doing something one day. That's totally fine. But, you know, acknowledge the small victories and build that up and think about what is it that drives you. What do you want to do that is so powerful that you wish you could change or do something about, and let that drive you. And that can be your inner confidence that moves you forward.
I think that's fantastic advice. Really getting to know yourself, who you are, and every little build that confidence. Like every little challenge you overcome will make you feel more confident and ready to do whatever it is you decide you want to do. Even if that's bringing your, you know, and bringing up your kids, like, you know, that's a career in already this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also don't be scared to fail. A lot of women, we don't do things because we think, oh, what if it goes wrong? Because of that perfectionist thing that we're wired for naturally. But don't let that get to you. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to fail a lot initially. There's going to be things that just don't add up, don't work, you don't know how to do it. But you need to be able to be okay with that going forward. I think to really understand what it feels like or means to be successful, you have to have these no's, and understand what that feels like. So don't let that hinder you. If you want to do something, just go forward and try and make it happen.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, we'll see you soon at the office.